Hey everybody, so with the PS4 version of the game due to release in August, we're going to have a look today at how the roadmap played out on the Xbox release of the game. Now I do want to go on record as saying this is all speculation. I do not know anything else about the release of PS4 than the rest of you. However, looking back over the roadmap and everything that has been released on the Xbox version might be able to shed some light on where the developers will be looking at taking the PS4 version. Now, as I said, this is all my own opinion, so feel free to leave your own opinion on what you feel the game should look like and how it should develop moving forward on the PS4. So we're going to take a look back at how this roadmap over the first half of 2019 played out. It's often interesting to see how the patches actually landed to get a feeling of the real timescale between these. So it is going to be a little bit bland and plain in the sense that I've just put everything onto an Excel spreadsheet. So let's take a look. Okay, so when the game initially released on the 4th of March, this was following the Head Start period, and we had the 6 original classes. So we had Sorceress, Wizard, Witch, Zerker, Warrior, Ranger. We also only had access to the Calphian region, and we were capped at level 55 with plus 15 enhancement on all of our gear. This meant that it was very easy for most people to catch up and be at around the same level before the first patch really hit. Now, it often feels like the Medea patch came a lot later than it did, but the reality is that on the 12th of March we got patch 1.2 with Medea. This completely wiped the level cap. It also brought into the game Pride, Duo and Tri-gear being available. However, there was a very high shortage or a very high demand and low supply of sharps and hards during this period, and that's because people hadn't prepped in advance, so there were a lot of low energy people that couldn't gather as much. We also didn't have the time to stockpile on lucky tools, and pretty much nobody saw this coming. So that was the first big twist in the terms of the roadmap. The fact that we got Medea so quickly was a little bit of a shock, and it did mean that we thought that the Awakening patch wasn't going to be far away at all. Now the next significant patch came a little bit later on the 20th of March with the world bosses being added. They also brought some quality of life changes at this point, things like the CM notifications, but there was nothing really notable that got added into the game at this point. However, it is worth noting that there were 2 days between the 20th of March and the 22nd of March where the game was really poorly optimized in terms of world bosses, to the point where if you were on at prime time and trying to do Zarka, you would pretty much either not be able to hit the boss or you would disconnect. This was a huge issue because it meant that people just weren't able to actually go to the bosses and get their weapons. The few people that were lucky enough to be able to do higher damage and be put into the higher tier for the bosses were pretty much cleaning up with loot. Anybody that was in melee range would either not be able to get close to the boss or would just outright be disconnected. Thankfully, on the 22nd of March we did get that optimization where we were able to remove other people. This meant that you could now do world bosses properly. There was pretty much no real lag at that point, which made a lot more sense when it came to being able to do bosses, and it was good to see that they were able to bring that in very quickly. Now, it wasn't long after that we got the first 4 new classes added to the game. Again, this is something that feels like it came much later, but in reality, it literally came a month after release. So we were only waiting for 4 new classes for a month. That should give you some reassurance that new classes aren't coming out 6, 7, 8 months down the line. A lot of people have been jumping at the fact that if PS4 only has the first 6 classes, then we're not going to get Ninja for 7 months or some rubbish. The reality is the timescale has not been that long. So with those 4 new classes, we got the Lan, Striker, Musa and Dark Knight. We got a lot more quality of life changes in the sense that we got guild payouts added. There was some class balance changes to bring us up to the PC patch in terms of balancing. And we got some great events. These events were to level each of the new classes to level 55, and if you did that you would get basically a ton of money, sharps and hards, which were going to tie in with helping people catch up to that tri level of gear that everybody was starting to push for. This was a great opportunity for people to try out the new classes, to re-roll and to just pick up some free stuff. And it wasn't long after that, on the 10th of April, that we got the field bosses added. So this added boss loot, it added the enhancement to the Asula accessories that we could already get from the Medea region, and it offered people the opportunity to start collecting the rarer boss gear. Now this came really soon after the new classes as well, and I'm glad that this sort of came after the classes rather than before. It meant that people were already leveled up on these new classes and were looking at enhancing boss gear. It did start to trickle onto the marketplace, but there wasn't a ton of this available. So people that did have boss gear were then struggling to enhance it as well because of the lack of sharps and hards. But overly, once you got a piece of boss gear, you were pretty much fine then for the foreseeable future. Those people lucky enough to get begs were doing very well in terms of accuracy, and people that managed to pick up Muskin shoes were causing an absolute nightmare in PvP in terms of sort of small scale and 1v1, because other classes didn't necessarily have the accuracy to hit them. It was a fun time though, and it was pretty interesting to see that field bosses had come considerably quicker than we expected. It was then on the 7th of May, so this was the biggest gap that we had. It was between the 10th of April and the 7th of May where we got little to no updates, and this was a real pain. But on the 7th of May we got the Valencia update. We got access to the Kutum World boss, we got access to Tet and Pen enhancements, we got ultimate reforms, and we had a load of quality of life changes put into the game. Things like the Purifying Priests and the enhancement versus durability for building fail stacks, and just better quality of life when it comes to enhancing of gear. It's also worth noting that between this period we got melting accessories as well, so we were able to melt down accessories to get sharps and hards, and this meant that a lot more people were getting their gear to try. Having Tet and Pen opened at this point in time though wasn't necessarily the greatest thing, because we did see the first wave of real pay to win, and this is where people were actually able to stack cronstones to the point that they could just randomly throw out low fail stack attempts at Pen. This drove the community mad because people were hitting Pen level of gear before others were even getting to try or Tet. This is one of the biggest mistakes I think they made personally. We could have very well stayed at try gear for a little bit longer, however I can understand why they put this into the game when they did. It's also worth noting though that during the Valencia update we had our absolute skills, and this was a little bit of a twist. We got absolute skills before we had awakening. Now, absolute skills are meant to be an icing on the cake thing that come after your awakening because they improve some of your pre-awakening skills. However, having the absolutes in Valencia meant that we could grind Valencia despite not having awakening. And this was going to be key, and the reason for that is because of the long gap again between the next patch. So from the 7th of May until the 29th of May, we just had absolute skills, we were grinding Valencia, and we were just waiting and waiting for the awakening patch. And it was on the 29th of May that we got the Awakening update, and this is where everybody's classes changed. We saw a huge amount of people re-rolling off the classes because they didn't like their Awakenings. People who knew what was coming and knew what to expect and had planned their class based around their Awakening were having an absolute ton of fun, whereas other people were re-rolling and selling Zarkas and offhands all over the place. This was interesting because it meant that the Kutum that was added in Valencia, those offhands were becoming more and more readily available on the marketplace, and also there was a ton of try weapons or even some Tet weapons going on the marketplace for people that were re-rolling from their class. This was an interesting time because it meant that there was an abundance of Zarka stuff available again, and people that were re-rolling were either lucky enough to pick up sort of try or Tet weapons from people rolling off their classes, or were able to sell theirs relatively quickly and make a nice switch over to other classes. Now, between the 29th of May and up until pretty much the recent day, there weren't any massive patches. On the 19th of June, we did get the Nuva boss, we got Arsha, and we got Battle Arena, but there was nothing massively huge there. The Arsha servers have helped, it gives the improvement to drop rate, and it meant that people had pretty much flocked over to Arsha servers and the PvP increased in the world. This was huge because PvP was starting to die off a little bit. A lot of the bigger guilds were starting to just hold regions in terms of sieges, and there wasn't a lot going on. Arsha meant that people were able to pick fights in the open world and were really starting to enjoy the PvP again. This is huge because it meant that people were making more money, the economy was starting to improve, and there was a lot more PvP going on. It wasn't until the 26th of June though that we got another update, and that was the Shy class being added. Now this was a little bit of a strange one because nobody saw this coming. The Shy class has only just been developed, but it did mark the first point where we were able to get something at the same time as PC. Looking past the fact that Shy was added before any of the other additional classes that are currently available on PC, and looking at this as purely a positive, you can see that the Xbox version was patched at the same time as PC. This is a step towards future content updates being across the board for all platforms. Personally, I wasn't fussed on the Shy class, and I'm not overly bothered that it was added before other classes. I can see that on merit, the fact that the developers were able to release this class purely because it was ready was a fantastic thing. But that then leads us up to the next new class that was added, and that was added this month. So the 10th of July, we got the Ninja class added. The class was finally added to the game. It was following a poll that the devs did, where they were trying to get a feel for which were the most desired classes. They've also openly said that what they're going to do is look to hopefully work down that list, adding into the game the most desired classes based off the feedback from the community. This is a good tool that allows them to develop based around what the community wants, rather than just putting out content that they feel should be in the game at any given point. We haven't got the rest of the roadmap though, so we're not sure what's coming with Camisylvia or anything else in the game, so it will be interesting to see how the second half of the year roadmap plays out. But anyway, let's go on to what you're all here to see, and that's how I feel that the PS4 version of the release should go. So looking back over everything we've looked at, we already know a couple of things about PS4, but that's all we're limited to. So we know from day one we're going to have the same 6 original classes. So that means that we're going to have access to Sorc, Witch, Wizard, Ranger, Zerker, Warrior. But we're not going to have access to anything else currently. Unless something dramatically changes, this has been confirmed as 100%. You will find that the information is a little bit spotty about this, but I can assure you that these are the classes that have been confirmed for release. Now it's what happens after then that should be key. I personally think that all of the quality of life changes that are currently in the game will be there from release. This is huge because it means that we're not having to go through the same buggy aspects of the game that Xbox did. This will allow people to get on and enjoy the game at a much smoother rate. I do also feel that from a PS4 perspective, the PA devs' main goal here is to get PS4 caught up to Xbox so that they can unify the patching. This is step 1 to unifying all the platforms, and from there, both consoles can then be rapidly pushed towards the PC base. That's going to allow them to patch the Western version of the game at the same time. I'm not sure how this would tie in with the Korean version. Because of the translation, there may be a little bit of a disjoint between when the Korean version of the game gets the updates and when the Western version gets the updates. But anyway, I digress a little bit. So let's have a look then. What would be the best, or at least in my eyes, the most logical step? So for me personally, I would love to see a good 3 to 4 weeks on the original Medaya patch. 3 to 4 weeks with the original 6 classes, the Calfian region would be amazing. If they wanted to break that up, I think that they could do 2 weeks with the original classes and then add in the next 4, the Lance, Striker, Musa and Dark Knight, but still stay on the original Calfian patch. That means that these classes will be able to catch up to level 55, will be able to get to plus 15 on their weapons, and then will be able to get a level playing field before the Medaya patch. What I then think should happen is that Medaya should be released, and that should be released along with world bosses and Zarka. So that should be your field bosses, sorry, not your world bosses, but your Zarka and your field bosses. This allows boss gear to start trickling into the game at the same time as the Medaya patch. Along with the Medaya patch, I think that they should wait 2 weeks before they introduce Pride, Duo and Tri-Gear, and at the same time as that, they should also release Melting into the game. Either Melting or a very good event would mean that people are able to enhance their gear at a steady rate. That coupled with boss gear wouldn't be too much hassle because it means that the pure amount of materials going into boss gear would offset the readily available sharps and hards, so it wouldn't have too much of a detrimental impact on the economy. From there, I would like to see another month, another 4 weeks left at Medaya with ideally Node Wars and Conquest available before we go into Valencia. That would mean that we're looking at 3 months before Valencia hits, and on the Valencia patch I'd like to see the tech gear, the pen gear, also access to Kutum and Nuva at the same time, and Awakenings. That would mean that we've had a good 2 months and some Conquest Wars pre-awakened. Then we're going into Valencia, where I think they should open up Calfian for the first time, and they should look at having the Awakened Conquest take over from there. This is what I feel would be a very quality roadmap. It would be 3 months in terms of the release patch before we start to catch up to Xbox. From there, I'd like to see that the added additions to the Xbox, like the Camisylvia region, and some of their patches could be bundled into a single patch and added to PS4 for the 4th month, which would mean that by the end of 4 to 5 months, we should be bang on where Xbox is, giving us a unified patch and allowing us to progress the game. All in all, I feel that this would give the PS4 player base a good shot at enjoying the game on its own merits from start up until where the Xbox version is now. It wouldn't feel too rushed, and I also think it would allow the devs to improve the release schedule when compared and looking back at the Xbox version. As I said though, this is all my opinion, it is personal opinion, and I'd be genuinely interested to find out what you guys think should or shouldn't be done, or how you'd like to see the game to be released. Now, I wouldn't get your hopes up at the fact that everything's going to be thrown at the game from day one, and to be fair, that is a very good thought, because if they were to add everything from day one, I think it would have a negative impact on the console player base. Unlike PC players, console players tend to be a little bit more short-sighted, at least from what I've experienced, and if you were to throw all of the systems at those players from day one, it could become incredibly tedious for them. Having to try and compete with people that are lucky enough to get tech gear, especially within the first couple of weeks, would just be a nightmare. Overall though, everything I've said I feel is genuinely reasonable, and I'd be interested now to see what the devs come back with and what their updates are for us. I did this video purely to give my own opinion, but also I've been pretty good in terms of guessing where the patches are going to be, what we're going to be getting added at any one time. I was great through Xbox, I nailed everything except for one of those patches, which really irritated me. But I'd be interested, like I said, to see if what my ideas are for a smooth, good release schedule mirrors what PA are thinking. It's good though if PA are thinking this way, because it means that they're listening to the player base and they're taking feedback on board. As always though guys, if you are new to the channel and you do like this content, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for everybody that's been following me from day one, and for all the guys that have already signed up to join the membership for the Vex Gaming channel. I really appreciate it, and I will be having a members only video and some members only live streams coming within the next couple of weeks. As always guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.